Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Years ago, I worked as a security officer in a high-traffic tourist area, graveyard shift. One of my responsibilities was to make sure my building's loading/unloading zone is kept clear because at all hours of the day we've got vehicles coming and going for people going to meetings, visitors, tourists, cabs, and so on. The curb is painted white and marked in big bold letters, loading and unloading only, no parking. At the end of the zone there was a single handicap parking stall painted bright blue. Now the building I worked at was nearby a few large nightclubs, so every Friday and Saturday the area would be crazy busy with drunken fighting, vomiting, occasional alleyway sex, and so on. All night long there would be cute girls milling around in skimpy outfits, so the job had its perks too. Clubbers would take advantage of my building's valet parking service and pay to park in our garage before heading out to one of the clubs across the street. Some clubbers would think they could get away with parking in our loading zone all night. My co-workers and I would aggressively patrol the area in the earlier evening hours and advise as many people as we could so they would leave and avoid getting a ticket. It was also better for us if they left, because when there were too many vehicles parked out front, traffic would become a complete nonsense regardless of the time of day. Most people will be grateful for the information and leave. Occasionally, some douche would laugh in our faces, say something about pigs or rent-a-cops or whatever, and leave their car anyway. In those cases, we'd call our city's parking enforcement and they would get a $90 ticket for their troubles. One Saturday night, after finishing around the patrols, I went to take a leak. On my way back out, I walked past dispatch and my buddy called me over to the surveillance bank. "Hey bro, you got one out front." I turned to the grainy feed just in time to see a piece of junk 97 BMW sloppily parking in front of our building. I murmured that I'd go out and advise the driver, but before I could leave, the driver exited his vehicle. My buddy and I watched in silence as the driver, a young black male adorned with flashy cheap bling, hiked his pants up at the crotch and blocked the path of a couple girls walking by. He started hitting on them in the slyest way possible, even trying to grab their hands in other areas at one point, staring shamelessly at them while he was schmoozing them. He took out his phone and shoved it at them, presumably asking for their numbers. Eventually the girls were able to dodge his grabbers and ran off toward the club across the street. He repeated his routine several more times with various groups of girls walking by, even taking out a small bottle of vodka from his back pocket and offering swigs. With each rejection, he'd get angry and presumably cuss out the girls as they hurried off. Our cameras didn't pick up audio, but this seemed a reasonable assumption. I sighed and looked at my buddy. Well, I guess I'll go talk to him. I made my way out to the front and approached him just as another group of girls ducked away from him. I called out to him, he turned and stared at me blankly. "Hey man, just wanted to let you know that this zone is for loading and unloading. Normally it's not a big deal to park for a bit, but everyone does it on a weekend. Traffic gets backed up pretty bad here." The douche looked at his vehicle, then at my badge. "Screw you, witch. I'll screw you up." I looked at my watch, it was about 10:30 p.m. I continued my spiel. "Parking enforcement here is pretty strict. You should move your vehicle or you might get ticketed." "Screw you, you jerk. Better not touch my crap. I'll screw you over." "Well, have a good night, sir." He flipped me off and went across the street, where he was promptly denied entry for dress code violations. He cussed out the bouncer and wandered off down the block. I walked over to his vehicle and saw that it was parked crooked, the rear of the vehicle partially blocking the lane of traffic. Half of his vehicle was in the white zone and the other in the blue zone. I keyed up my radio. 8 million, go ahead. Can you call parking enforcement for this vehicle? Let me know when you're ready for the plate. 15 minutes later, the parking officer arrived. He looked at the vehicle and promptly issued a $90 ticket for parking in the white zone and a $900 ticket for parking in the blue zone without a permit. I thanked the officer and went back inside to have a snack. A couple hours later, two of the local cops stopped by to say hi. As Officer Morris and his partner walked over, dispatch radioed me. Hey, 8 million? Is that Jones and Morris? Sure is. You gonna do what I think you're gonna do? Yep. Officer Jones and I lit up our cigarettes as Officer Morris looked on disapprovingly. We all smoked and chatted for a bit. Then I casually motioned over my shoulder at the BMW. Hey Jones, check out the parking job on that piece of crap. We all walked over to the corner and looked at the vehicle. The two tickets stuck on a windshield flapping in the wind. Officer Morris grabbed one of the tickets, read it over, and looked at me. What's the story here? I told him what happened and the driver's response. Officer Jones and Morris looked at each other. 8 million. You got the time? Yeah, it's 12:27 a.m. Well, it's a whole new day now, isn't it? Officer Morris proceeded to write another $90 ticket for the white zone, then another $900 ticket for the blue zone. He paused for a moment after finishing the second one. Hey Jones, looks like this vehicle is parked more than 12 inches from the curb. What do you think? Sounds about right. Officer Morris wrote another ticket for $120 and slapped it on a pile of tickets on the windshield. I shook both officers' hands and they left to continue their patrols. The next few hours of my shift went by fairly quickly. Around 5 a.m., dispatch scared the hell out of me. Hey 8 million, are you still on that call? Negative. I just finished clearing this. Respond to dispatch ASAP. I ran back to the surveillance bank where my coworkers were all gathered and laughing their butts off. Sunday was street cleaning day and the BMW was getting ticketed again by parking enforcement. After that, we all stopped by dispatch every 5 to 10 minutes to see if the owner had returned. Finally, at about 6 a.m., douchebag came stumbling up the block, looking completely worn out. His formerly white t-shirt was stained and dirty and it looked like he'd lost at least one fight. We watched in suspense as he looked at the pile of tickets crammed together on his windshield and slowly removed them. He stood there, pants sagging below his knees, shuffling through each ticket as if he were a toddler with a handful of Pokemon cards. With a look of abject defeat on his face, he got into his vehicle and drove off. The whole room erupted in laughter and high fives. As the laughter died down, I picked up the office phone and started dialing. My coworkers eyed me curiously. I put the call on speaker just as the call connected. 911, what is your emergency? Yeah, hi. I'd like to report the possible drunk driver. I have the vehicle and drive description when you're ready. Okay, so I am from Norway. So I was working as a car mechanic for some years as an apprentice. This means that I don't get paid a lot of money for a usually good paying profession in Norway, so I didn't have a lot of money. I was looking for a new car that I could use as my commuter car. I visited a used car dealer. I found a Volvo V70 D5 2004, the type of car I was looking for, and when I asked one of the salesmen that I wanted to look closer at it and take it for a test drive, from the start of this encounter I got a feeling of hostility. This was just after I was done working, so I was still in my work clothes. I got some plates for the car. He told me that you can place them on a car yourself. I wasn't impressed with this service. When I got around to testing the car, I found out it was going to limp mode and there were some other issues with it. They wanted close to $7,000 for it. I know Volvo and have owned several of the same kind, so I know the prices for parts and what they are worth in its bad condition. When I got back to the store, I tell them about the faults on the car and I asked them how much playing room they have for the price. He told me there was no room for lowering the price. At this point, I was a bit annoyed. I proceeded to tell him the price of the parts I would need to fix it, about 3 to 4K in parts, and then the work. So I offer buying it for 2.5K, and he grins at my offer. He then started ranting about how useless and broken I must be, saying that I, a mechanic, need to pay someone else to fix it. I was never going to pay someone for it. I was going to do it myself. I was going to give him a bid of 3.5K and just sell the car on the high end when I was done with it. But after this, I told him, the fact that I'm a car mechanic is a benefit for me. I will not pay a higher price than what it's worth. I told him that if I buy it for that amount, I will lose up to 3 to 4K on my end. We went a bit back and forth and I went to my car to cool off. When I was sitting in the car, I saw a shady guy walk out from the work shoot. He got into the car I was testing and went on a drive. After 2 minutes, he returned. He then lifts up the hood and looks dazed into the engine bay. I went home a bit down. It was a good car. That was like 18 hours of work to be 100%. When I got out of the shower, I saw that the sales dude was calling me and I had 4 missed calls. I answered the call and he then starts blaming me for ruining the car and that it was all my fault. At that moment, I was so frustrated. I told him I hadn't done anything to the car. I was only driving it for 3 minutes. It was in the same condition when I started as when I left. He called the police and they then came to question me. The shop had my info from the test drive. I gave my statement and I don't hear anything for about 2 weeks, other than some emails from the dealer that ordered me to pay them the small amount of $10,000. I didn't have that amount of money to just give away. At this point, I was getting calls several times when I was at work in my off time. I called the police to get some info on a case. The officer told me that I wasn't at fault and that I didn't need to pay the claim they were sending me. They then told me that they had found that the car was that way before I drove it and it wasn't my fault. They then asked me if I wanted to press charges for blackmail. When I heard it, I saw dollar signs. I left work and filed out the police documents. To make it a bit shorter, the dealership was found guilty of blackmail and needed to pay me a settlement of $4,000 for impeding my work and slander. I also requested a formal apology from the manager and salesman. I saw the anger in their eyes and I was loving it. I gave them 1 star on Google and left a comment and used the money to buy the same car from another dealer. I fixed a new car and then went back to their dealer. I waited outside the car so they saw me in my new car. I love the system when people think they can screw over the working people. Thanks for reading. Since we're talking about apartments recently, I was living in Atlanta 10 years ago and won a 1-year lease at a charity auction. My rent was $600 a month prepaid. Market rent was $1,500. A good deal. The security deposit was only $150. More on that later. A year is nearly up and I sign a lease at a new place. About a month before I'm ready to move out, the leasing agent for the apartment complex stops me and asks about my renewal. We had always been cordial to this point, but things were about to get very nasty. He asks, "Are you renewing for another year?" "No, I have a lease on a new place. I'm moving out." "Well, we require a 2 months notice, so you have to give us a notice in writing. We are going to charge you the market month-to-month rate, $2,000 per month. If you don't live here during that time, it's your fault." "Well, let me read my lease and get back to you. As I'm in real estate, I know how to dig through a lease." I read it up and set up a meeting. About a week or 2 later, the agent says, "Thanks for coming back in. I hope you understand how much trouble you are in and your financial obligations. I have spoken to the corporate office about your situation. They are willing to make the 2 months notice a fine and only charge you $3,500 since you will not be living here." "Yeah, about that. Per the lease, you are required to give me notice of my new rental rates before the 2 months notice commences. Failure to do so invalidates the 2 months notice." "We did that. We left it under your door. I don't know if you did or not. Either way, it clearly states that the notice must be given via certified mail. Return receipt. By hand delivery works just the same. Not according to the lease." I hand her a copy of the lease with the notice section highlighted. Did I sign a receipt stating that I received a notice? I did no such thing. Per section, all notices must be sent certified mail. Here is a copy of a tracking number for my notice not to renew. Send certified mail, return receipt requested. It should be received by your office today if you don't have it already. We got it, but me interrupting her. As my lease is up in 15 days, some time had expired between meetings. The 1 month's notice puts me half a month into next month. You can keep my security deposit for these 15 days. My old lease rate is still in effect as a notice was not given of the new rates. This gives you 2 weeks to splash and dash the apartment upon my departure and have a new tenant in by the first of the following months. But it doesn't work like that. Well, call corporate. I think their attorneys will side with me. Have a good day. I never heard the beep from them after that. No collections, no letters. I stayed my extra 15 days, which helped me with moving to the next place. and thought that leasing agent, she really needs to learn more about the product she has control over. A little backstory. I moved to a new city almost a year ago and started to take the bus to and from school. This all started in October, but I stopped dealing with her crap in January. Anyways, so I was waiting outside school one day and this lady came and parked right in front of the bus stop. I knocked on her window and she rolled it down. The following conversation ensued. Hi, do you mind moving your car? It's a bus stop. The rude lady scoffs and rolls up her window. Now, I have a short temper sometimes, and this is one of those times. Couple minutes later, me, slightly annoyed, please move your car. The rude lady sighs. Where else is there to park? Many other spaces open. Me, more annoyed, literally anywhere else. Get your eyes checked? I pointed to other spots. Ah, screw you. And she drives to another spot. Now, this is happening every day up until January when I lose my crap, but during this time, I did some research and found out parking in front of the bus stop is illegal. Oh boy, am I ever happy for some sweet, sweet revenge. So I start taking some photos proving that she's parking illegally, write down her plate number and the address of where this is happening. Once I had enough evidence, I emailed the city bylaws department and they confirmed that parking there was in fact illegal. I also attached my phone number so they could call anytime, and they did. They asked me to call them when I saw her again so they could send a tow truck and an officer. Monday, the day she parks in the bus stop, and I have a grin on my face. Me knocking on a window, move your car. If you don't, I will call the boys in blue and get your car impounded. No, you won't. You dumb teenager, no respect. Just move. No, wait and see where you park when you start driving. Not in front of a bus stop like a crackhead. How dare you? I will tell the principal. Well, try me. She huffs and turns off her car. I am doing it now. She runs inside and I call the bylaws department. They say that they will be there soon. About 5 minutes later, an officer and a truck shows up. The officer gets out and asks, is this her car? Sure is. Alrighty. He signals for tow truck driver, and the driver begins to prepare the truck and attach the car while the officer writes a ticket. The rude lady comes storming out. What are you doing? Well, you parked here illegally and your car is being impounded. There is nowhere else to park. Doesn't matter, law is law. The rude lady starts yelling at the officer for a few minutes, and in the meantime the tow truck driver has hooked her car up to the truck and writes a bill. When the rude lady has seemed to calm down, the officer handed her a ticket for a parking violation. The tow truck driver gave her the towing bill as well. The rude lady's jaw dropped to the earth's core. Officer tells her, the fee is $50 per day for your car being stored in a lot. The rude lady now fuming, you can't do this. Neither can you park in a bus stop. The rude lady turning to me now, you little jerk, you did this. The bus turned around the corner and stops to let me on. Thanks, officer and driver. I grinned and gave the rude lady the bird as I got on. It's now April, and I haven't seen her since. So I never knew about this community until now, so I'm happy to share my story. This happened a few years ago. So my fiance at the time, now wife, was driving around looking for dresses for her bridesmaids to wear for the wedding. We have been going from place to place looking for something she liked, but no luck. We had just finished leaving David's bridal and were leaving the plaza. It had been raining a lot, so the roads were slick. As I reached the intersection of where the plaza met the road to turn out, another car came turning in. Unfortunately, he didn't brake soon enough and skidded into the front into the driver's side. Thankfully, everyone was okay. We got out of our cars and looked at the damage. His car, of course, was completely unharmed and mine had a minor dent. He looked about 45-ish and had his son in the car with him. We exchanged names and phone numbers. He let me know he was on the way to work and I told him we were just wedding shopping. I was 22 at the time and very naive as to what to do in case of an accident. He told me that we both seemed pretty busy and that we should just handle it ourselves since we were both busy. We didn't call the police, my mistake, and he told me to get the damage looked at to see what it would cost. I took the car in 2 days later and they quoted me $1,100 for the bumper to be replaced. I texted him and he told me he will be getting scholarships in 2 months when he goes back to school, and he will be able to pay me in cash then. I again naively told him that's fine. A week later, I followed up with him about another estimate I got, which was lower than the original $900, but I got no response. I texted him again and again for the next few days and nothing. At this point, I realized he had bailed. I came up with a plan to find him. All I had was his name, a now useless phone number, and a general area of where he worked. I searched for him on Facebook and was pretty sure I found him. I searched under his family members and saw what looked to be like his son. My soon-to-be sister-in-law was 16 and looked about the same age as his son. I decided to go full-on sleuth and go undercover. I used her Facebook and changed her last name to match theirs. I then messaged the son and told him that I thought we might be cousins. I asked him some questions about his dad, like name and his job, and told him that my mom said I have an uncle down there by that name and worked at this guitar shop. He answered yes, that was his dad's name, and told me the name of the place where his dad worked. I was so relieved I was making progress. The next day I drove back near the accident and found where the man worked. I found his car and took pictures of his license plate, and I then took all the information I had and went to the courthouse. I filled out paperwork and handed it to the clerk. The clerk told me they could either mail the form to his work address, or if I paid $25, I could have an officer hand deliver it. Of course, I paid the $25 just to embarrass him at his place of work. A few weeks later, we were summoned to the court to see if we could work things out before going to an actual hearing. He showed up and we sat down with a mediator. She explained everything to us, and I told him I didn't want to do this, but he stopped responding. He replied that his phone was stolen, so he had to get a new one. In my mind, a phone being stolen doesn't equal changing your phone number. I knew he was lying. The moderator asked him to step outside. She talked to us and told us to not trust him because his story didn't make sense. The mediator invited him back inside and we read over the terms I listed in the court documents. He was to pay $2,400. I charged him the original replacement cost, gas from driving back and forth, my time for doing all this work and extra just for being a jerk. He said he would pay, but he didn't like that I went to his job and took pictures of his car. I replied that I didn't like that he hit my car. A few months later, he paid the full amount in cash and had to pay for our court costs as well. I sold the damaged car and took the cash he gave me to buy another car fully in cash. All in all, I benefited from it, but next time I'll just call the cops and save myself the headache.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.